The neural suppressor's hum died just as Brand's vision cleared. Pain lanced through his skull like molten wire, memories fragmenting and reassembling in violent flashes. The underground arena stretched before him, carved from living asteroid rock, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins that cast everything in sickly amber light. Thousands of alien spectators filled the tiered galleries above, their collective breathing creating a rhythm like distant drums. He shouldn't remember this place, but he did. Brand flexed his fingers, feeling the weight of the plasma blade they'd given him. Standard Dominion gladiatorial equipment designed to cauterize wounds and prolong the spectacle. His tactical training cataloged exit points automatically. 17 possible escape routes, all sealed. The memory blocks were failing. Across the circular fighting pit, she emerged from the opposing gate. Tall, predatory grace wrapped in midnight blue skin that seemed to absorb light. Bioluminescent markings traced geometric patterns along her arms and throat, pulsing in slow, hypnotic waves. Her eyes burned with inner fire, and when she moved, every motion spoke of deadly precision honed across decades of combat. The crowd's roar faded to white noise as recognition hit him like a physical blow. He knew her face. Sira, the whisper came unbidden to his mind. Warrior priestess of the Velnari, champion of 100 battles. The living weapon they'd unleashed against human settlements in the Outer Rim. But beneath that programmed hatred, something else stirred. A warmth that made no sense. A pull that defied 3 centuries of engineered hostility between their species. The arena master's voice boomed from hidden speakers, words distorting through atmospheric processors. Brand caught fragments in multiple languages, but the meaning was clear enough. 2 enemies, 1 survivor. Entertainment for the masses, while political machinery ground forward in chambers far above. Sira raised her own weapon, a curved energy blade that hummed with lethal promise. When she spoke, her voice carried across the arena's acoustics with crystalline clarity. Your neural blocks are dissolving. Brand's hand tightened on his grip. The words shouldn't have made sense, spoken in an alien dialect his training had never covered. Yet understanding flowed through him like blood remembering the shape of veins. He took a combat stance, muscle memory overriding confusion. Elite forces training demanded he evaluate his opponent's weaknesses, calculate kill vectors, end this efficiently. Instead, he found himself studying the flow of light beneath her skin. The bioluminescent patterns weren't random decoration. They pulsed in sequences, mathematical progressions that triggered responses in his own nervous system. As if his body recognized a frequency it had been designed to hear. Sira circled him with liquid grace, her blade weaving hypnotic arcs through the thick air. The crowd's anticipation pressed down like physical weight, thousands of alien minds hungry for blood and spectacle. Your people call you Brand of the 7th Legion. The knowledge hit him sideways. He had been 7th Legion before the capture, before the memory wipes, before they'd branded him a war criminal and sentenced him to die for entertainment. But how could she know that? My people remember differently. She struck without warning, her blade singing through the space where his head had been a microsecond before. Brand rolled, came up in a defensive crouch, his own weapon intercepting her follow-up strike in a shower of sparks. The impact sent vibrations up his arm that felt almost like recognition. They danced through the opening exchanges, testing each other's reflexes, mapping the boundaries of skill and speed. Brand's training screamed at him to press advantages, exploit openings, end this before she could adapt to his fighting style. But every time he moved to strike, something held him back. Not mercy, something deeper. Sira's blade carved through his guard, scoring a line across his ribs that sent neural fire racing through his nervous system. He spun away, tasting copper, and saw her hesitate for the briefest instant. as if she'd felt the pain too. The crowd's roar intensified. They wanted escalation, wanted to see bone and tissue separated from spirit in artful displays of violence. The arena's atmospheric processors cycled faster, feeding oxygen-rich air to fuel the fighter's endurance. Brand pressed his attack, driving her back toward the arena's outer wall. His blade work was textbook perfect, each strike calculated to create openings for the next. But Sira flowed around his aggression like water, her counter-strikes arriving with surgical precision that suggested she knew his combat patterns better than he did. Impossible. He'd never fought her before. Had he? The memory hit him mid-strike, a fragment of battlefield chaos overlaid with present reality. Sira's face, younger, marked with different patterns, fighting beside him rather than against. Human and alien troops moving in perfect coordination, their weapons targeting something vast and hungry that devoured starlight itself. The vision lasted only seconds. When it faded, he was on his knees, her blade at his throat. The crowd fell silent. Sira's eyes burned with inner conflict. This close, he could see the fine network of neural interfaces beneath her skin, could smell the ozone-sharp scent of her body's electrical field. Her blade remained steady, but her breathing had changed. "You remember." He nodded, not trusting his voice. Her free hand moved to touch his forehead, fingertips tracing patterns that sent shivers through his nervous system. Where her skin contacted his, warmth bloomed like stars igniting. "Kethara null vas." The words emerged from her throat like a song, each syllable resonating through the arena's crystalline structure. Ancient syllables that seemed to rewrite reality as they passed through the air. Brand's world exploded into light. Memories cascaded through his consciousness, lifetimes of experience compressed into heartbeats. He saw the concordance as it had been, human and alien civilizations joined in common purpose. Saw himself younger, unmarked by the scars of engineered hatred, working alongside Velnari technicians to construct weapons capable of wounding entities that existed between dimensions. Saw Sira as she had been then. Not an enemy, a partner, more than a partner. The visions showed him stellar cartography sessions that lasted for days, their minds linked through biotechnical interfaces that allowed them to map cosmic phenomena no single species could comprehend alone. Showed him defensive installations built on the galaxy's rim, crewed by joint human-alien teams, whose neural compatibility had been enhanced through careful genetic modifications. Showed him the enemy that had driven them to such desperate measures. The devourers moved through space like living darkness, entities that fed on stellar energy and left behind cosmic voids where star systems had once burned. They existed partially in normal space, partially in dimensions that intersected reality at angles that hurt to contemplate. Conventional weapons passed through them harmlessly. Conventional defenses crumbled like paper. Only the bonded teams could hurt them. Human tactical brilliance married to alien mystical understanding, creating warriors whose combined consciousness could strike at targets that existed in multiple dimensional matrices simultaneously. Brand saw himself learning to fight not just with weapons, but with his mind joined to Sira's, their thoughts flowing together like binary stars locked in gravitational dance. Saw the moment when battlefield necessity had evolved into something deeper, when their neural compatibility had become emotional resonance. Saw the love that had flowered between species, despite every biological and cultural barrier, and saw how it had been torn away. The memory cascade reached the purification, the systematic dismantling of the concordance by extremists on both sides who viewed species integration as contamination. Saw the reengineering of history, the memory wipes, the careful cultivation of mutual hatred, designed to ensure that human and alien would never again achieve the unity that had once saved the galaxy. Saw Sira being dragged away as council soldiers filled his veins with neural toxins, her desperate voice calling his true name as consciousness faded. When the visions ended, Brand found himself collapsed against the arena wall, his body shaking with the effort of processing centuries of suppressed memory. Sira knelt beside him, her bioluminescent patterns now pulsing in perfect synchronization with his own heartbeat. The crowd above had gone completely silent. Even the arena's atmospheric processors seemed to have paused, as if the entire facility was holding its breath. Your neural pathways are rebuilding. Sira's voice carried undertones that resonated in frequencies below human hearing, but Brand's modified nervous system translated them into meaning. The love in those tones was overwhelming. 3 centuries of forced separation compressed into desperate relief. He reached out, fingertips tracing the luminescent patterns along her throat. Where his skin touched hers, the markings flared brighter, responding to bioelectrical fields that had been tuned to harmonic resonance decades before either of them had been born. The modifications are still active. She nodded, tears tracking down her midnight blue cheeks. The genetic alterations that had allowed them to bond, to fight as unified consciousness, to love across species barriers, had been dormant but not destroyed. The Purification Council had tried to erase their connection through memory suppression and behavioral conditioning. They had failed. Brand pulled himself upright, his body remembering combat reflexes that belonged to a different version of himself. The arena around them suddenly felt small, temporary, a brief pause in a conflict that spanned galactic history. Above them, the alien audience stirred restlessly. The gladiatorial combat they'd come to witness had transformed into something else entirely, something that made them uncomfortable in ways they couldn't articulate. Whispers rippled through the galleries, fragments of ancient legends about the time before the hatred, when the 2 species had been more than enemies. Sira rose fluidly, her weapon forgotten on the arena floor. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted into configurations Brand recognized from shared memories, tactical displays that conveyed complex information without words. They know what we've remembered. Brand nodded grimly. Somewhere in the facility's command centers, security personnel would be analyzing the confrontation, noting the neural resonance patterns, reporting to superiors who would recognize the implications immediately. The Purification Council still existed, still worked to maintain the artificial hatred that kept human and alien civilizations at each other's throats. They would not allow 2 bonded warriors to survive and risk spreading the contagion of remembered unity. Already, Brand could hear the subtle changes in the arena's ambient sound that suggested weapons systems powering up, blast doors sealing, atmospheric composition shifting towards sedative concentrations. They were out of time. He retrieved his plasma blade muscle memory, guiding him through equipment checks that belonged to battles fought centuries ago. Beside him, Sira moved through similar preparations, her movements flowing with the deadly grace of someone who had killed in defense of ideals worth dying for. The arena's public address system crackled to life, the arena master's voice tight with barely controlled panic. Brand caught enough of the alien dialect to understand that the exhibition was being terminated, that the facility was going into security lockdown, that the prisoners would be executed immediately. Sira's laugh was bitter music in the recycled air. Around the arena's perimeter, concealed weapon ports began to iris open, revealing energy cannons designed to reduce organic matter to component atoms in seconds. They fear us more than the devourers. Brand hefted his weapon, feeling the neural interfaces in his spine beginning to resonate with Sira's bioelectric field. The connection was still fragmented, damaged by centuries of suppression, but growing stronger with each passing moment. As it strengthened, He began to remember techniques that had once made human-alien teams the most feared warriors in known space. Let them fear. The first energy bolt carved through the air where they'd been standing, superheating rock and filling the arena with the smell of vaporized minerals. Brand rolled left while Sira dove right, their movements perfectly coordinated despite 3 centuries of separation. The targeting systems, designed to track individual combatants, struggled to adapt to opponents who moved as extensions of a single consciousness. Brand came up firing, his plasma blade's energy discharge striking the first cannon in its focusing array. The weapon exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal, sending shrapnel raining down on the panicking crowd. Sira had reached the opposite wall, her blade carving through structural supports that held another weapon mount. Ancient Velnari combat techniques, designed for fighting in 3 dimensions, let her use the arena's architecture as both cover and weapon. But there were too many cannons, and their connection was still too weak to sustain the kind of unified assault that had once let them wound entities existing across multiple dimensions. A bolt caught Brand in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing against the arena floor. Pain flared through his nervous system, but underneath it ran something else. Sira's anguish at his injury, transmitted through neural pathways that were rebuilding themselves in real time. She screamed, a sound that carried harmonics in frequencies that made the arena's crystalline walls ring like struck bells. Her counterattack came with berserker fury, her blade work transcending technique to become pure expression of rage. 3 more weapons died under her assault, but the remaining cannons were adjusting their targeting protocols, beginning to predict the patterns of her movement. Brand forced himself upright, his left arm hanging useless at his side. Through their growing connection, he could feel Sira's exhaustion, the toll that her fury was taking on her enhanced metabolism. They had minutes, maybe less, before the facility's security systems overwhelmed them through simple attrition. Above them, the crowd had begun to evacuate, alien dignitaries and military officials streaming toward exits as the arena transformed from entertainment venue into active battlefield. But Brand's tactical awareness, sharpened by shared memories, caught the subtle wrongness in their movements. They weren't panicking. They were withdrawing to safe distances. Something bigger was coming. The arena floor began to vibrate with subsonic frequencies that made his bones ache. Deep in the facility's structure, massive machinery was coming online. Brand recognized the harmonic signature from battlefield experience that wasn't entirely his own. Dimensional weapons. Artillery pieces designed to wound entities that existed in multiple reality layers simultaneously. The same weapons that had once been used against the devourers. They're going to destroy the entire facility. Sira's mental voice carried grim certainty. The Purification Council would sacrifice thousands of lives to prevent 2 bonded warriors from escaping and potentially spreading the contagion of remembered unity. From their perspective, it was a reasonable trade. Brand's enhanced hearing caught the subtle whine of charging capacitors, the electromagnetic buildup that preceded dimensional artillery discharge. The weapon would need several minutes to reach full power, but once it fired, nothing in the facility would survive the reality distortion it generated. We need to reach the neural core. The thought came from both of them simultaneously, memories overlapping and reinforcing each other. Every major Dominion facility included a central neural processing unit that coordinated security systems, life support, and defensive weapons. If they could access it directly, their combined consciousness might be able to override the lockdown protocols, might be able to turn the facility's own weapons against its controllers. But the neural core would be heavily defended, and their connection was still fragmentary, damaged by centuries of suppression and chemical intervention. Brand caught Sira's eye across the battlefield, seeing his own desperate hope reflected in her luminous gaze. Together, they moved as one, their coordination transcending conscious thought. Bran's tactical training merged with Sira's mystical understanding of combat as spiritual expression, creating a fighting style that belonged to neither species individually. They flowed through the remaining defensive fire like binary dancers, each protecting the other's blind spots, each strike creating openings the other could exploit. The arena's weapons, designed to target discrete individuals, struggled to track opponents who moved as facets of a unified consciousness. The exit leading to the facility's upper levels had been sealed with blast doors designed to withstand ship-mounted weaponry. Sira's blade carved through the first layer, while Brand provided covering fire. His plasma discharge keeping the automated defenses focused on the wrong target. The door fell away in glowing sections, revealing a corridor lined with security sensors and defensive emplacements. Brand and Sira plunged into the maze of passages beyond, their shared memories providing navigation through a facility neither had seen before, but both somehow knew. Behind them, the dimensional weapons charging cycle reached crescendo, reality itself beginning to twist under the strain of exotic energy fields. They had minutes to reach the neural core, minutes to attempt a desperate gambit that might save them, or might simply ensure they died together rather than apart. Brand found he could live with either outcome. The facility's upper levels blurred past in a series of running battles and narrow escapes. Security teams moved to intercept them, only to find that their training for dealing with individual threats left them helpless against opponents who fought as extensions of a single mind. Brand's tactical brilliance identified weak points in their formations. Sira's combat artistry exploited those weaknesses with surgical precision. Together, they moved through armed resistance like a blade through silk, but their enhanced abilities came at a cost. The neural connection that gave them such deadly coordination was rebuilding damaged pathways in real time, sending feedback loops of pain and exhaustion through both their nervous systems. Brand could feel Sira's fatigue as if it were his own, could sense the moment when her enhanced metabolism began to falter under the strain of sustained combat. And she could sense the moment when the energy burn in his shoulder reached the point where his left arm became completely useless. They compensated for each other's weaknesses automatically, but each injury, each moment of exhaustion, reduced their effectiveness exponentially. The neural core lay 3 levels above them, protected by security measures designed to stop armies. The dimensional weapons discharge was less than 2 minutes away. Brand's enhanced senses caught the approaching footsteps before they rounded the corner. Heavy combat armor, military-grade energy weapons, coordinated movement that spoke of elite training. Purification Council strike team. He and Sira pressed themselves against the corridor wall, their breathing synchronized, their heartbeats falling into matching rhythms. Through their connection, tactical information flowed like shared blood. 12 soldiers, full-powered armor, dimensional disruptors that could wound entities existing across multiple reality layers. The same weapons that had once made human-alien teams the most feared warriors in known space. We can't fight them directly. Sira's mental voice carried acknowledgement tinged with desperate determination. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. But they had advantages the strike team couldn't anticipate. Brand closed his eyes, letting his consciousness merge more completely with Sira's. The connection was still fragmentary, but strengthening rapidly as their nervous systems remembered pathways that had been carved by decades of shared combat. Through her enhanced senses, he could perceive the approaching soldiers in spectra beyond normal human vision, could feel the electromagnetic signatures of their equipment, the bioelectric patterns of their neural activity, could identify the one whose armor showed signs of recent modification. The strike team leader was carrying something that made Sierra's bioluminescent patterns flare in recognition and rage. A memory extraction unit, designed to record the complete neural patterns of bonded warriors before their execution. They wanted to study the connection that had once threatened their artificial order. Brand's rage merged with Sierra's, their combined fury creating feedback loops that sent power surging through reconstructed neural pathways. For an instant, their consciousness achieved the kind of perfect unity that had once let them wound entities existing between dimensions. The facility's lights flickered as electromagnetic fields fluctuated wildly. In the corridors below, sensitive equipment began to fail as their combined bioelectric field interfaced directly with the neural core's security systems. The strike team rounded the corner just as reality twisted around them. Brand and Sierra struck as unified force, their attacks arriving from angles that conventional tactics couldn't predict or counter. They moved through three-dimensional space as if it were merely a suggestion, their consciousness operating in perceptual frameworks that let them perceive and exploit weaknesses in their opponent's four-dimensional positioning. The first soldier died before he could raise his weapon, Sierra's blade opening his armor like paper, while Brand's discharge overloaded his suit's power systems. The second lasted long enough to fire a single shot that carved through empty air where they should have been but weren't. The third managed to activate his dimensional disruptor before Brand's plasma bolt took his head off. The disruption field expanded outward, reality bending and flowing like heated glass around its edges. Brand felt the distortion trying to tear at his consciousness, to separate him from Sierra by forcing their awareness into different dimensional matrices. He held on through sheer determination, his sense of self anchored by the connection that had survived 3 centuries of suppression. Together, they weathered the reality storm. When the field collapsed, 9 soldiers lay dead in the corridor. The strike team leader stood alone at the passage's far end, his memory extraction unit raised like a weapon. His voice carried through his armor's external speakers with mechanical precision. The council offers terms. Brand and Sierra moved closer, their weapons ready, their consciousness still partially merged from surviving the dimensional attack. The extraction unit tracked their movements with predatory focus. Submit to neural recording, and your deaths will be quick. Sierra's laugh was music touched with madness. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted into configurations Brand recognized from shared memories of desperate last stands, of battles fought against impossible odds for principles worth dying for. We offer counterterms. Brand raised his plasma blade, feeling power surge through the neural pathways that connected him to the woman who had been his partner, his love, his other half across lifetimes of separation. Release the lockdown, and your death will be quick. The council operative's response came in the form of neural static, the memory extraction unit firing directly into their merged consciousness. The attack was designed to overload bonded neural pathways, to force separation by making connection too painful to sustain. Instead, it fed power directly into the reconstruction process. Brand and Sierra screamed as one, their voices harmonizing in frequencies that made the facility's crystalline structure ring like a struck bell. Neural pathways damaged by centuries of suppression snapped back into full functionality, their consciousness merging so completely that individual identity became temporarily meaningless. They moved as unified entity, striking with precision that transcended physical law. The council operative's armor might as well have been constructed from paper. His weapons might as well have been toys. When the echoes faded, they stood alone in the corridor, their breathing synchronized, their heartbeats marking time in perfect rhythm. The neural core lay one level above them. The dimensional weapon's discharge was 30 seconds away. Brand's consciousness expanded through the facility's network. His tactical awareness interfacing directly with security systems that had been designed to keep intruders out, but had never anticipated attack from within their own neural architecture. Beside him, Sira's mystical understanding of reality's deeper structures found the quantum pathways that connected the core to the dimensional artillery, the electromagnetic conduits that carried targeting information and firing commands. Together, they reached into the facility's electronic nervous system and began to rewrite its fundamental programming. The dimensional weapon, poised to reduce the entire facility to exotic matter, found its targeting parameters shifting. Instead of aiming at the arena complex, its exotic energy fields began to focus on the Purification Council's command ship, orbiting in high atmosphere above them. Safety interlocks, designed to prevent friendly fire incidents, tried to abort the firing sequence. Brand and Sira overrode them with merged consciousness that existed partially in electronic space, partially in dimensions that intersected reality at angles computers couldn't process. The weapon fired. Reality twisted, space folded in on itself, and the Council's command ship simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but edited out of the universe as if it had never been built. In the sudden silence that followed, Brand and Sira stood together in the facility's neural core chamber, their hands clasped, their consciousness still partially merged through pathways that had been rebuilt from memory and desperation. Around them, the facility's systems began to shut down as their controlling intelligences processed the implications of what had just occurred. The lockdown protocols deactivated. Emergency lighting flickered to amber alert status, and through the facility's communication arrays, automated distress signals began broadcasting the news that would reshape galactic civilization. The bonded warriors had returned. Brand looked into Sira's luminous eyes, seeing his own exhaustion and desperate hope reflected there. They had survived the arena, survived the Purification Council's attempt at elimination, survived the restoration of their connection. But the galaxy they had awakened into was still the same one that had tried to destroy them 3 centuries ago. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the devourers were stirring, sensing the return of the only force that had ever been able to wound them. Already moving toward inhabited systems with hunger that had been building for 300 years, Sira's fingers tightened in his, her bioluminescent patterns shifting into the tactical displays that meant preparation for a war that would span the galaxy. How long until they arrive? Brand closed his eyes, accessing stellar cartography data through neural interfaces that were remembering capabilities they had been designed to forget. His consciousness touched observation, satellites scattered across the galactic rim, analyzing gravitational anomalies and electromagnetic disturbances that marked the passage of entities that existed between dimensions. 2 years, maybe less. Her smile was terrible and beautiful, love and determination merged in expression that belonged to someone who had chosen to fight impossible battles for causes worth dying for. Then, we have work to do. Brand nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling across shoulders that had been engineered to bear it. They had remembered their connection, had survived the Council's attempt to eliminate them, had proven that the modifications that had once created bonded warriors could still function after centuries of suppression. Now they had to find others like them, had to locate the scattered descendants of human-alien teams hidden among populations that had been taught to hate each other, had to rebuild the concordance before the devourers arrived to finish what they had started 3 centuries ago, had to save a galaxy that didn't remember it needed saving. Hand in hand, they walked toward the facility's exit, their footsteps echoing through corridors that had been designed as tomb, but had become birthplace instead. Behind them, automated systems continued broadcasting the signal that would bring both salvation and terror to worlds that had forgotten the price of unity. The bonded warriors lived. The devourers were coming. And somewhere between those two truths lay the future of every consciousness in known space. Syrah's laugh echoed through the facility's corridors, touched with madness and hope in equal measure. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with the rhythm of shared heartbeats, shared purpose, shared love that had survived 3 centuries of imposed hatred. "We're going to change everything." Brand squeezed her fingers, feeling the electric tingle where their modified nervous systems interfaced directly, sharing thoughts and sensations in real time. "We already have." They emerged into the asteroid facility's docking bay to find chaos waiting for them. Ships fled in all directions, their crews desperate to escape the facility before whatever had happened in the arena could spread to them. Evacuation alarms wailed through thin atmosphere, while automated systems struggled to maintain life support for a population that was abandoning the station as quickly as possible. In the confusion, no one noticed 2 figures moving toward the facility's communication array, their movements coordinated with inhuman precision. No one saw them accessing transmission systems that could reach every inhabited world in known space. No one anticipated the message that began broadcasting on frequencies that would penetrate jamming systems and override local censorship protocols. The signal that would announce to the galaxy that its greatest hope and its greatest threat had both returned from the darkness. And in the spaces between stars, ancient intelligences that fed on stellar energy felt the familiar resonance of minds they had thought destroyed forever. The devourers turned their attention toward inhabited space. The hunt was beginning again.